Thank you. Okay. Let's let the public. Right. Thank you. Go ahead. Just can you state your name and address, please?
I'm Jennie DunKley. I live on 9 Meeting House Lane, and I just want to say that the best way to prevent the need for discipline, shaming, seclusion, suspension, and special needs that send a child out of district is not to have the need to consider them. So give patience with me. I appreciate your time. I'm Jennie DunKley. I've been a special education consultant for over 25 years, representing hundreds of families and attending well over 1,000 IEP meetings. I've been a trainer for the Federation for Children with Special Needs since 2008, contributing to the content and conducting workshops on basic rights, IEP development, transition, and learning styles. I'm a parent representative and past chair of the Massachusetts Special Education Advisory Panel. I'm serving now for the second time, now as a special education surrogate parent, which is an educational decision maker for students in DCF custody that are in congregate care. As a core stakeholder for the IEP Improvement Project, I help ensure that parent and student concerns remain at the forefront and at the front of the IEP, and that the first and central, the student voice was for the first time included as a vision statement. I'm here today as a special education consultant for numerous Easton families, and as a 31-year resident of Easton, and as a mother of a 31-year-old neurodiverse man who couldn't be educated in his own community, and who now will likely be on disability for the rest of his life, and may never be financially independent or meaningfully socially comfortable or included. Easton's preschool and kindergarten provided excellent inclusion programs, and in May of 2001, at the end of a very painful year of first grade at Parkview, I asked my son Sam's teacher, will he be okay here next year? And she crossed her arms and looked down at the floor, and I don't have Asperger's or nonverbal learning disorder or a central auditory processing disorder, and I knew exactly what she meant. So for my child, for my baby, there was no seat on the bus. And we unilaterally placed him at the Wolf School, which was then in its third year, a non-766 school at that point. It was housed in 3 rooms at the JCC in Providence. We fully funded and transported for 3 years, and I have never financially or emotionally recovered from that. We entered into a settlement agreement with Easton for the remainder of his time at Wolf, and when it came time to high school, there was still no appropriate inclusive programming available at OA. So we spent multiple hours every day commuting to a different school for 4 years, all on Easton's dime. In 2012, Sam was a senior, but lacked the social communication and executive functioning skills to be ready for graduation. And back then, there were no meaningful transition programs, except perhaps for students with complex health and intellectual disabilities. So I put together an A-team with core members of Easton Special Education. That included Beverly Conte, Shannon Caruso, and Barbara Bigelow. I got some powerful volunteers, transition advocate Marilyn Weber, Terry McLaughlin, who is a transition specialist at the Federation, Scott McLeod from MGH Aspire, executive functioning guru Sarah Ward, and oh yeah, Sam DunKley. We consulted with Ross Green, integrating collaborative proactive solutions as well as social thinking protocols. Outside of staff time, it cost Easton nothing to develop this program. And as a team, we coordinated the development and implementation of a transition program for solidly cognitive post-12th grade students with executive functioning and social communication challenges. We envisioned the program would be housed and staffed in Easton and hoped to tuition in students from surrounding towns, actually making it a profit center. I'll never forget the moment when Beverly told me, after we had the program developed, that East didn't have the space for it. Ivy Street School picked up the banner, and once again, Sam had little to no exposure to typically developing peers and spent 2 to 3 hours a day on the van. There was still no room in Easton for my son. I can't tell you how it feels to walk into this building and know that there wasn't a seat for him. I can't tell you what it feels to me every morning when I see the school bus go by and know that there wasn't a seat on the bus for my child. For Sam and for just about every family I've consulted with who needed an out-of-district placement throughout the Commonwealth, the need for intensive and expensive services was preventable. If we had the tools and skills to support him in second grade, he wouldn't have needed to go out of district. If Easton had had an appropriate program in high school, if we had made space for the post-12th grade transition program, I suspect he would have a more independent and contributing adulthood, and Easton would have been able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's with circuit breaker for just one student, my son. The system is set up to kick the can down the road, to not label, to wait for the burgeoning gap, and for there to be a suspected disability, to wait for a child to fail before responding. And then we blame school administrators and our teachers for not having the tools and resources they need to meet the needs of students with disabilities in general ed settings. There is a conflict of interest embedded in the special education process. The people that need to evaluate are the same people that have to provide and deliver services. And too often they're forced to check their calendars and their caseloads before they make individual recommendations for frequency and intensity of needed individualized services. And SPED directors, even the really great ones like we have here in Easton, have the worst job in the whole world. Hey, Greg, here's $100. You can educate 100 children or one child. Go ahead, do your job. And oh, by the way, you can't talk about money, but you still have to be fiscally responsible. Their only option is to prioritize needs and kick the can down the road for lesser needs until those become too big to ignore. And family and school trust deteriorates. 50 years ago, when the special education law was born here in Massachusetts and spread to the nation, the expectation was that feds would provide 40% per pupil special education expenses. 50 years on, and federal funding is less than 11%. It's never been more than 12 to 15%. And that means despite the mandate, states and towns are on the hook for about 90%. There is a bipartisan bill pending right now in Washington that would fully fund Title I and put special education funding on a 10-year glide path to reach that 40% level. And I'm going to be in Washington first week in May with the Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates, COPA, pushing for a 17% increase in appropriations for the first year of that glide path. This is a bipartisan bill, so fingers crossed. There's a little bit of a glimmer of hope for a slightly larger Band-Aid, but we all know that that cannot be counted on, especially with the dissembling of federal oversight, research, and staffing that will now fall to Massachusetts in order to ensure that we don't start a slide back to the days when some children were considered uneducable. Our current financial crisis is the result of our failure to respond to the little gaps, to respond early. More intensive needs require more intensive, expensive, and exclusionary interventions. More importantly, we will continue to develop less prepared, less confident, less engaged adult citizens who will continue to need supports and services for the rest of their lives and for the rest of our wallets. And as long as we fund education on an annual and on a zip code basis and are forced to put off addressing gaps when they are small, there will be gross inequities and the stupid, crazy, long-term, lifelong financial impacts on our budgets. It's what has contributed mightily to where we are today and why we desperately need this override. All those little cans that we kicked down the road, all that could have been addressed in real time, are now smothering boulders. This override is beyond critical, and not just to cover the bills that we're mandated to pay. And we need to not necessarily bring students back. We've already sort of lost that deal. But we do need to put in services sooner to prevent the need for it. If we cut back on services to children and support for our teachers this year, If we continue to kick the little cans down the road, those boulders will bury us. Personally, I don't think the proposed allocation for education is sufficient. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to recover the human and financial costs that we've made in the past, even if the override is passed. I can tell you that education and catching those gaps when they are small is the best investment we can make that can reduce future town budgets and better secure all town services. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. She stands there every day and watches the school bus go by, and she's not joking because she brings her dog to the school bus so that the little boys on our street can say hi to Cookie every morning. And we've talked about how hard that is, so thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing Sam's story.
Thank you so much for coming and for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Thank you to those who went to the microphone. I know that it's very hard to be up there and to be sharing personal stories that are so personal but so important. The perspective that you bring to the cost of not funding education properly cannot be overstated. Thank you.